Today on Doomed! Folks, he's running.
Hi, I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president, and I'm asking you today to be part of an unprecedented grassroots campaign of 1 million active volunteers in every state in our country. Our campaign is not only about defeating Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. It is not only about winning the Democratic nomination and the general election. Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice.
Damn. I'm excited. How about all of you? Ladies and gentlemen, today on Doomed, a last-minute show/stream because I am thrilled at this latest news that Bernie Sanders is running for president again. I didn't mean for again to sound like that. Again. But I'm pumped. I mean, I knew he was going to run again. You all knew he was going to run again. Who didn't know he was going to run again? I mean, I guess there was a slim chance being that he didn't announce right away, or, you know, as Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris and even Amy Klobuchar jumped in. I guess people were starting to get worried about Bernie not jumping in. If I was him, actually, I would have held back even more. I would have waited to the very last minute to jump in, because why bring the attention to the race that he's bringing now? That's just but he's running now, and I'm pumped. I'm happy. No need to Monday morning quarterback the the strategy here. But folks, I don't have a guest today because I just wanted to jump on and do this. But we're gonna do a show, and I've done a show without a guest before, so when I do that, this is what I usually do. I pull up my Skype. I log into the official Doomed Skype user account, calldoomed. You can jump on Skype if you'd like, and you can call into this show if you want. You could even be on camera. I could get you up right next to me via the split screen, and you can call into Doomed and talk with me about this wonderful news that Bernie Sanders is running for president. And also, if you know me, you know I not only would like to talk to fellow Bernie supporters, but there would be nothing that makes me happier than if an anti-Bernie Sanders centrist, an anti-Bernie Sanders Democrat, an anti-Bernie Sanders Republican, which I guess is most Republicans, not true, but many of them, call in. That's it feeds me, really. But again, that Skype username is calldoomed, CALLDOOMED. There's no space in between, just one word. And I will take your calls. And I see Chai in the, or Chi, however Chi LMAO wants to pronounce their name, say in the comment section on YouTube, Skype, boo, Discord, baby. Yeah, but as I've said before, I don't have this program I use to live stream is perfectly enabled with Skype. So I could just pull you guys in and do a split screen, and we could have a nice conversation. Can't do that with Discord. So Discord, go fuck yourself, and maybe next time. Let's get to this clip that I pulled. So Bernie basically announced on Vermont Public Radio this morning. I don't have that handy, but that's when he announced. But nationally, he announced via a CBS interview that happened this morning, that I played this morning. So let me play this first clip that I pulled here, where Bernie basically says, what's the difference between, is asked by the CBS anchor, the CBS interviewer, what's going to be different about this time? And let's see what good old Bernie Sanders, everybody's favorite Democratic socialist, or second favorite, depending on where you place AOC. Both are neck and neck to me, but Bernie, I think, gets a little bit of the push, being that he's the reason it is where it is today. Let's listen to this clip.
So, Senator Sanders, you're going to run for president.
I am going to run for president. That's correct.
What's going to be different this time?
We're going to win. We are going to also launch what I think is unprecedented in modern American history, and that is a grassroots movement, John, to lay the groundwork for transforming the economic and political life of this country. That's what's different.
And that's your theory, which is that without the groundswell, without the grassroots, you can't change the politics
That's
in
exactly
Washington.
right. Look, John, somebody can come before you and say, look, I want to do A and I want to do B, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, the only way that real change takes place is when millions of people stand up, fight back, and say, enough is enough. We're going to have a government that works for all of us, not just the few. But bottom line for me is I think it is absolutely imperative that Donald Trump be defeated, because I think it is unacceptable and un-American, to be frank with you, that we have a president who is a pathological liar, and it gives me no pleasure to say that, but it's true. We have a president who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a xenophobe, who is doing what no president in our lifetimes has come close to doing, and that is trying to divide us up.
But all of your opponents will say, we've got to get Donald Trump out of the White House. That's not your distinguishing characteristic. So
that is not my distinguishing characteristic. I think what I am very proud of, and in a sense, this campaign, John, is a continuation of what we did in 2016. You will recall, you may recall, that in 2016, many of the ideas that I talked about, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, making public colleges and universities tuition free. All of those ideas, people will say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical, they are extreme. The American people just won't accept those ideas. Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years? All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream.
you're saying the party came your way?
Well, I don't want to say that. I think most people would say that.
Is that your argument then against your competitors, which is, I was Medicare for all before Medicare for all was cool?
I guess that's one way of looking at it, but it's no. I know many of the people, certainly the senators who are running, and without exception, I am fond of them. They are, in some cases, my friends.
Let me ask you on your Medicare for all. You have talked about the fact that polls show 70% are in favor of Medicare for all. But that number drops to 37 if somebody hears private insurance is going to go away, which is what your plan offers. So I guess my question is, you're offering something that the polling shows people can get very spooked very quickly about.
No, well, but that's because we're going to be taking on the insurance companies and the drug companies who are going to spend a whole lot of money distorting what we believe in. The bottom line is the average middle-class family will save money, will spend less money on health care, will have more choice, and have broader coverage than is currently the case.
The other challenge to your healthcare plan will be cost. People will say, my goodness, there's no way everybody's going to get covered, and
John,
some of the estimates that come out.
No, I need you in the media to help us explain the truth.
Yeah.
No more out-of-pocket expenses. No more deductibles. The cost of prescription drugs is going to go down. We expand the kinds of coverage available for senior citizens.
But what are we going to do about my beloved health insurance plan? I love my health insurance so much with my sky-high premiums and my co-pays. What are we going to do about that? I don't know. This Medicare for all thing sort of sounds iffy to me, guys. Anyway, that was a really good interview. I thought Bernie was he was really good in that one. He, right off the bat, says basically, we need to defeat Donald Trump, but more importantly, we need to change how politics in this country work. It's not enough to be anti-Trump. I feel like I've been beating people over the head with this, and so has a lot of leftists and democratic socialists and straight-up socialists and progressives for the past, how many years? Since, I would say, even 2015. It's not enough to beat the Republicans. It's not enough to beat Trump. The country is, the way things are going in this country are not good. And I don't know how else to tell you that than Bernie Sanders coming out and saying this in 2015, 2016. And millennials, young people in this country, coming out in droves for the guy. He, and this isn't me saying this, this is literal facts. I posted this little fact on Twitter earlier today, that Bernie Sanders is the most popular young people candidate in modern United States history. And people said, oh, where are you getting that from? You can't just come out and say that. I'm not just coming out and saying that. I shared a Vox link. Bernie Sanders had more young people, millennials. I believe the actual cutoff is something like, 35, 36, something like that. That age and below vote for him in the primary in 2016 than any other presidential candidate in modern history. And you say modern history because we don't have the details for those specific stats and specifics going that far back. But I'm going to go ahead and guess probably the most popular young people candidate in United States history, period. Obama's 2008 run was a record for years. Obama didn't beat that record in 2012. Bernie beat that record before the 2016 primary was over. So I don't know what to say to anyone who doubts those stats, because them's the breaks, guys. That's just the facts, Jack. Or I should do a Hogan there. Brother, that's the facts, Jack. We had someone trying to call in before, but they said their audio was playing Never Bernie on them. I love Never Bernie. That's my favorite hashtag. It's hilarious. Some of the most, completely normal people on that hashtag, right? Let's go to some comments here before I get to the next video. Kennedy, Bernie, Louis, hell to the motherfucking yeah. Namdenet, just saying second, even though he was third. Oh, sorry, Namdenet. Chai, Sanders, Misha, Bernie with a heart. Aw. Another Bernie gonna give it to you. Chai, I like to call him Sen Sanders instead of Bernie. Is that nerdy? Yeah, it is. Just call him Bernie. He's Bernie. Or as I'll pull this up because it's too funny to just not play. I don't want to just. I'm not going to just say it myself when there's an actual clip here. I should have had it ready. I'll look for the clip in a second. But as Cardi B calls him, Daddy Bernie, bitch. That's what I'm going to go with from now on. That's his full. I hope they announce that's his when he comes out for the debates. That's how they recognize him. The senator from Vermont, Daddy Bernie, bitch. I think that's what she called him, right? Yeah, vote for Daddy Bernie, bitch. How could I forget that? That's ingrained in my head, Hold on. I found it. Oh, 1 second. Let me pull it. Let me pull this. Too funny. I love it. And I say funny because it's great. It's probably one of my favorite internet clips I've ever come across in my life. And I'm so glad that she made it. Cardi B went up in my book when I always liked her, but this is even better.
Vote for Daddy Bernie, bitch.
I love it. Brian, hey, yeah, boy. Kennedy said it literally a few comments later. Vote for Daddy Bernie, bitch. Ed says amazing. Ryan asks, Matt, what is your take on lettuce? Well, usually I would tell you, but this is a all Bernie Sanders episode to celebrate Bernie Sanders' presidential run. Which, speaking of which, I'm going to go to the next video that I pulled. This is also from that CBS interview. And I like this video especially because, as you all know, there is going to be an independent running as of right now. And it's not Bernie Sanders because he's running as a Democrat because he caucuses with the Democrats. So Bernie is not a Democrat, folks. You just gotta, you gotta pull back on that for the next couple of years because it's not going to be accurate. He is running for the Democratic nomination. But running as an independent is a centrist named Howard Schultz, who is a Starbucks coffee billionaire. You've probably heard of him. You've probably seen what he has been out there saying, which policy-wise is not very much. It's all, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this, but I'll think of a way where we can do fix healthcare the way I think as a billionaire centrist we should fix. He also dropped the line that, billionaires is basically, a slur for the rich and the wealthy, and they should be called people of wealth, like people of color, people of wealth. So if you're a, if you're a POW, if you're a person of wealth, Howard Schultz might be your guy. But for the majority of Americans in this country, he probably isn't. And this is what Bernie had to tell CBS this morning about good old centrist billionaire, independent presidential candidate for 2020, Howard Schultz. This is what Bernie had to say about him.
Howard Schultz has now said he would not run as an independent if the Democrats nominate a moderate.
Isn't that nice? Why is Howard Schultz on every television station in this country? Why are you quoting Howard Schultz? Because he's a billionaire, all right? There are a lot of people I know personally who work hard for a living, who make $40,000, $50,000 a year, who know a lot more about politics than, in all due respect, does Mr. Schultz. But because we have a corrupt political system, anybody who is a billionaire, who can throw a lot of TV ads on television, suddenly becomes very, very credible. So what Mr. Schultz, what is he, blackmailing the Democratic Party? If you don't nominate Bernie Sanders, he's not going to run? Well, I don't think we should succumb to that kind of blackmail.
The other reason is that he represents an argument that some people make, which is if you're worried about Donald Trump, the Democratic Party, to win voters in various parts of the country, needs to pick somebody who is not so radical. That's also what his theory represents.
Well, I think his deeper theory is, hey, I'm a billionaire, leave me alone. And let me make as much money as I can without paying my fair share of taxes. He's a billionaire. He's thinking of running for president. Suddenly he's a very famous guy. That is a problem with our political system.
Bernie, how long now? Weeks, this guy, Howard Schultz, has been out on TV, running his mouth, getting all this TV time. Literally, how many of you even knew the name of the Starbucks CEO before he decided he was going to run as an independent presidential candidate in 2020? His name came up. I was familiar with his name simply because I knew he was one of the people who backed Hillary in 2016. He donated to her, I believe. He was one of those names that popped up when you looked at the list of people who had some sort of name value, who were with her, hashtag with her. He was one of the names that came up. Literally, that's why I knew his name before he decided to run as an independent for president. Bernie, in how long was that clip? A minute and a half, almost 2 minutes, minute 40 something. In that amount of time, he completely shut down in a way that I've really yet to hear on mainstream media at the very least. I've heard great stuff on Schultz's bullshit campaign and his purpose of running on, indie shows and podcasts and YouTube channels. But on mainstream TV, in a minute and 40 seconds, Bernie Sanders shut it down. First of all, the disdain he just has for the run to begin with is fantastic. It's just right off the bat, just laughing at it, because that's really all it deserves. It's hilarious that this guy is running and getting all this media attention, and he's coming out. And, before he started talking, I think some people might have thought maybe he's like a Michael Bloomberg. I do not like Michael Bloomberg. I am against him on a lot of things. But, aside from a gaffe here and there, I think Bloomberg is smarter politically, at the very least, than Howard Schultz. By far. I think that's not generous to Michael Bloomberg. It's the truth. And this is coming from someone who does not like Michael Bloomberg. And I think Michael Bloomberg has had gaffes. But Howard Schultz has come out, and literally everything he said has just been a joke. Person of wealth. He came out and said how, we can't afford Medicare for all. And then when he was asked what he'd do about healthcare, he said he'd look into it. If you're going to come out and say something is impossible, something is at the very least, have some sort of vision going forward. He has zero vision. His whole purpose is to, like Bernie was just talking about when that interviewer just asked him, he said that he would not run as an independent in the presidential election if the Democrats voted for a centrist, a moderate. He's holding the Democratic Party hostage. It's a joke. And the fact that a billionaire, this is even more incredible to me. This guy, without spending a dime of money yet, in terms of I'm sure he spent some money on, advisors and that other bullshit. But in terms of spending actual money on, campaigning or sort of advertising or any sort of on the ground or media type work, any sort of, paid for media to tell people that I'm going to run for president and we need a moderate and we need a centrist and that's why I'm running. The guy hasn't spent any money on it yet. It's been free media just because he is a billionaire. It's insanity. It's crazy. The fact that he's incredibly rich is enough for him to get all this free media. It's a joke. And Bernie hit it right on the, hit the nail on the head right there. God, you guys know me. I live for this sort of conflict and drama. I'm policy oriented, but I'm at my heart, I'm also a troll. I like getting a laugh out of some of this stuff. And, in very serious policy talks, we need sort of a court jester like a Howard Schultz, in my view. But at the same time, I recognize how dangerous he is. So, Howard Schultz, stick around for a few more months as the presidential primary. This is probably the earliest the primary season has ever started. Stick around for a few months, provide us with a few more laughs. But before it becomes a problem, please drop out of the race and enjoy taking much less of your paycheck when Bernie Sanders or whoever, but Bernie Sanders really, becomes the next president of the United States, and along with AOC and a slew of other freshman Congress people who are progressives and Dem socialists, tax your ass. So, that's my view on Howard Schultz for now. There'll be a lot more. I've actually somehow gone a number of episodes since Howard Schultz announced without talking about him. Had more things to talk about than Howard Schultz, but I'm sure he'll be coming up some more. I see someone's on the line. If you're ready to call in. I'm going to go to the comments until this person calls in. Jay Jerebus. Wait, Bernie is running? Kennedy said down with lettuce. Brian says, when MR's away, Binder will play. I actually took off today from work because my kid is off for the winter, the winter break. And I saw the rumors Bernie was going to jump in. Oh, wait, we got a call. Let's take it. Give me 1 second to pull up the... you are on the line. Who is this and where are you calling from?
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
I could hear you. Ooh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it sounded like you closed your blinds and or shot somebody multiple times.
No, I have not done so. My name is Cameron. I'm calling from snowy North Carolina.
Ah, it's snowing in North Carolina right now? Well,
absolutely.
I need to pay more attention to the weather around the nation.
There's some sort of freak weather going on. But anyhow, I'm calling because I had recently, in 2016, I supported Bernie, but I never went onto the Twitter sphere, and I've been on the Twitter sphere more recently, and I didn't realize how much vitriol there was against Bernie on the Never Bernie side.
Right.
I saw some sort of meme, and it was Bernie as the socialist poison pill.
Right.
And Putin was like in a laboratory creating the pill or something.
Right. Yeah, there's some incredible... My favorite is... This one makes zero sense to me. If anyone could explain this, I would love it. It's the photo of Leonardo DiCaprio in The Great Gatsby holding up a wine glass or whatever, a glass of champagne, and the meme, the meme with the text, the white text with the black border on the top and bottom. The meme on that picture is, as always, on top, and on the bottom it says, fuck Bernie. Doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Doesn't make any sense. That's not how memes work. But that's my favorite one because it's just something that's literally like so insular that unless you're in that never Bernie bubble, it makes zero sense. But they share that photo as if like someone will see it, just any old person will see it and get it, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, there's a extremely weird and active on Twitter subgroup of never Bernie folks, Bernie haters. And this is my opinion on that. I'm not one of those people who think like, what happens on Twitter doesn't matter. It's not in the real world. Clearly, there's something like, I believe the most recent Twitter estimates from the company themselves is that they have something like 125 million active users. This is their number of real people, not just, a lot of companies report how many overall registered accounts there are, but that means, someone who registered 7 years ago and never used it again. According to Twitter, 125 million daily active users are on that site globally, I believe. So it is something. It's not nothing. But at the same time, the way Twitter works is that you are in a bubble. You just see tweets from people who are that you're following. So that limits that to begin with. And then for the Never Bernie example, that's people who are talking about Bernie Sanders and are showing up in the trends or whatever. It's very insular. Like, there's a whole world on Twitter that you and me are probably not even aware exists. Like, sometimes I'll fall into a rabbit hole and I'll be in a world of Twitter where they're talking about, K-pop stars 24/7 and the world outside of K-pop doesn't exist. And I'm like, whoa, I've never seen this world on Twitter before, because that's just how Twitter works. It's like whatever topics you're following, whatever people you're following, it's just what you see all the time. So you sort of, if you don't keep that in mind, you sort of think like, oh, that's what the world is talking about, which obviously is not true. But yeah, the never Bernie people on Twitter are out of their mind. They're out of their mind, really. And I'm not saying, if you're someone who doesn't like Bernie Sanders for whatever reason and you have a legitimate argument, there's certainly many criticisms you can level at Bernie. I've leveled criticisms at Bernie myself, and I'm a Bernie supporter. But a lot of this never Bernie stuff is bullshit belief that he is some sort of secret Russian agent, which is hilarious to me.
And what has gotten me on some of it is that a lot of the people, at least in their descriptions, are supposedly working for actual policy think tanks and that sort of thing, or for the government, like Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, what have you seen on that? I usually, they never Bernie people to me. Maybe every now and then it'll be someone who's like a writer at some, obviously like a Share Blue, like Blue Nation Review type David Brock website or something. But other than that, it's usually just, weirdos on Twitter. You've seen, obviously,
this is this isn't the craziest type of never Bernie that's doing the Putin building evil socialist pill. But the second level, like, it was a sort of viral tweet from someone. I want to say it was someone in working for the I can't remember. It was a policy think tank I've heard of that said, I can't wait to see that Bernie's finally going to get vetted as a candidate. He was never vetted in 2016.
Oh yeah, right. The whole vet Bernie thing, right? The idea
but then the same person said, oh, they never vetted Trump either, and I'm like, no, they vetted him. People liked what they saw.
Right. Listen, this has been my sort of long-term outlook on all this, and it's for a long time I really thought, and I still think this way really when it comes down to it, but I thought for such a long time that if only more people were invested and into politics, things would be so much better. The more people in politics and active, the better it is. People get educated, they learn about things, they become more interested in policy and what's going on in their government, in their country, in their world, and the world would be a better place. And I still think that. But what we saw in 2016 was people came into the political discourse who were never even interested in it before. Good on the outset. Good on what I've said so far is good because of Donald Trump. But that's where their whole, world of politics begins. There's no knowledge of what happened before, what's going on outside of just viewing it in that lens of reality TV show, bullshit that Donald Trump perpetuates. It's just drama and show in a shit. Like, nothing says it better to me than those signs at protests where they say something like, on the sign it says, if Hillary was president, I'd be sitting on a beach drinking a mimosa right now, or something like that. Or I'd be having brunch with my friends or something. And that's part of the problem. And, when I said I wanted more people into politics, I mean, obviously those people get into it. But I thought we would, people would learn and want to learn about the history of politics, at least modern day, at least go back to Reagan and update yourself on things since the 80s, where I think a lot of the problems, and not just myself, a lot of people think, where a lot of the problems we're dealing with today all began, at least understand where the Republican Party has grown since the 80s and what happened to the Republican Party during the 90s and how the Democratic Party became, sort of a working class party to becoming this weird, neoliberal, basically a way for people to make, all these think tanks to make money. It's you have to sort of have this basic common knowledge to be able to talk about these things. And obviously, if you want to pay attention to the presidential horse race and just care about that, and then whatever, you don't really care, you don't think and you want to go on Twitter and see what other people are saying, that's fine. But these Never Bernie people jump in and they literally think they are, policy experts when they say, what about Bernie Sanders' vote against the Russia sanctions, huh? It must mean he's a secret agent. And they think they're saying something smart. That to me is, that's a big problem. And
I do think there's a waking up to that because I'm a member in my local county's Democratic Party's Facebook group. And one person has kept on posting like, this is Sherrod Brown's answer to Medicare for All. Very pragmatic. This is Amy Klobuchar's answer to Medicare for All, very pragmatic. And people comment, they say, no, we want Medicare for all, or like we want a real compromise. It's not even a real compromise.
Right.
And so I think it's growing, but my concern is that it's growing slowly.
Right, maybe. Right. Well, Amy Klobuchar's, I believe her Medicare for All alternative is free medical care if you get hit in the head with a binder. That's her.
Yeah.
That's her policy. Yeah. No, but it's a joke. And listen, if you're one of those people who are pragmatic liberal and think we need to get to these things in baby steps, then you need to understand this, even if you're one of those people. The way you even get to those baby steps, the way you get any movement at all, is for the beginning, your first offer to be that shoot for the stars. It should be the Medicare for all. It should be single payer. It should be universal health care. If you're not starting at that level, then when you do negotiate for the compromise, it's going to be something worse than whatever your compromise is if the compromise is where you start. And
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Because what's got me is that the compromise positions that have come out that are in different bills, one of them I call Medicare for boomers. That if you get Medicare if you're 50.
Right.
That's a weird position, I think. There's tweaks to Obamacare. Most of them don't even go as far as Obamacare originally was meant to go with a public option. Right.
Well, let's put it this way. The idea behind that, though, is that it was once a popular policy to basically allow people who were a few years younger than the current Medicare age to become Medicare eligible. And people like, and I thinking of him right now because on Twitter I just got a tweet that said was directed to me and it said, @SamCedar, you gonna just let this man, me, poach your audience while you're away? And so there's that. But people like Sam Cedar for years have been saying, how easy it would be to lower the Medicare age to 55 or whatever. And that was the compromise because Medicare for All wasn't at the popularity levels or wasn't as well supported as it is today. That was the compromise years ago. That was the radical vision years ago to lower the Medicare for the Medicare age. And it never happened. So why are we still pushing for this compromise as what we're aiming for when we already know it's never going to happen? Shoot for Medicare for All. The idea that we'll get it if someone like Bernie Sanders wins the presidency is totally plausible and possible. The idea that we get a compromise to Medicare for All if another Democratic president, like Sherrod Brown or I don't know who else is against Medicare for All, if Kamala Harris isn't as supportive as Medicare for All as she says if she became president, their compromise is going to be probably the lowering the Medicare age or something that was once the radical goal. It's that simple. That's how this all works. And, I agree with you. It's ridiculous that in this day and age, now that we know just how much the younger generation it has been really brutalized by the politics that have led this country to a point where they are drowning in student debt and job prospects that basically say you can log into an app and work 15, 16 hours a day picking up people in your car that you had to purchase yourself. But somehow you are also working for another company like an Uber or a Lyft just to make some sort of minimum wage. That's the world they live in now. The fact that we're saying that we should not be focusing on these people is just ridiculous. And personally, in my view, I'm dying to know, and this is something I think people need to. I'm sure there's been studies or something, but I haven't really delved into it much. But I've been really thinking recently, just as I hear more and more about just how just study after study showing how millennials and the generation after them, and even a lot of Gen Xers even are just can't even save up a couple $100 in the case of an emergency. What's going to happen in a decade or two when boomers are all retired and they're not running the businesses anymore and they're not doing whatever anymore? Who's paying the expensive rents for the businesses in the major cities across the country? Who's buying up the homes in suburban America all across the country? Where are millennials getting this money? Or are we literally going to live in a country where the people who own property, the people who have any sort of savings, are just people who were born lucky to the boomers who had money and are handed this stuff down to them? I'm dying to see what happens in just really, it's going to be a few more years. And I think compounded even further in just a few decades.
Especially because I've seen more and more talk about there being an upcoming potential recession in the next few years that I think would exacerbate whatever economic situation we end up being in.
Right. Without a doubt, right. There's a recession coming. Without a doubt. I'm not a financial guru, but really, does that mean anything? How many we have our what's his face? Donald Trump's the guy who used to be on CNBC. What's his name again? I'm having a mental block right now here. I can't even think of his name. Larry Kudlow. There we go. Larry Kudlow. Mm-hmm. That guy literally was it a few days or a few weeks before the 2008 recession said how healthy the economy was in America and thought it was a joke that anyone would speculate there'd be a recession coming. It's coming. I don't know when. I don't know if it would be, again, the same way it happened last time where, as Trump's going out and whatever Democratic president's going in were hit, or if it'll happen during Trump's presidency, or if it'll happen a year or two into the next president's presidency. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But it's coming. And the idea that the economy is growing just because there's more jobs is a joke, because there's a lot less high-paying jobs. There are tons of low-paying jobs. There are layoffs going on across the country. There are people who are, there are no, we saw with federal workers who have jobs. Some of them had decent paying. I don't want to say well-paying because, a federal worker, how much are they making while living in D.C.? 70, 80, 90,000. They have a family. That's nothing in D.C. really. If they're, unless they're, if they're a single parent or the other person is watching the kids, whatever. We heard stories about them not even having enough saved up to last a month, which, to me, that's not crazy because I'm living it, not even making that much. But, it's gonna all come crashing down, and it's gonna come crashing down hard. And when it does, I don't know if it'll be worse than 2008. I don't know if it'll be, because of certain moves that were made to deal with 2008, if it'll be slightly less or something. But depending on who's sitting in the White House and who's in, what party, and specifically who in the party is running Congress, has the power in Congress, really will tell. Are we just gonna again, kick the can down the road another 12 years, 13 years, or are we gonna actually deal with the problems? And one of those problems is, and it's very hard, capitalism. And as much as I like Elizabeth Warren, and she's easily my second pick if, God forbid, Bernie Sanders does not win the Democratic nomination, she's just not willing to make those radical moves. I think she would go after the bankers and she would go after the financial industry harder than Obama, which wouldn't be very much, but obviously harder than Obama. And I think I do trust what she says, but she has also said herself that, at her heart, she's a capitalist. And I think what her beliefs are is that capitalism as it is working today is a problem. And there's a way to fix capitalism so it's working for everybody. Whereas Bernie Sanders believes that capitalism is a problem and it's working as intended. And that in and of itself is the problem. And we need to radically change that by basically moving on from capitalism onto, if he wants to just call it democratic socialism or whatever he wants to call it, whatever. But the idea that we can continue doing what we're doing is just out of the question. If we want, unless we want to see that, I don't want to say we're, some sort of apocalyptic scenario, but I can see it. I mean, it's only, I just saw this documentary on Amazon Prime about wealth, and it was the same documentarian that did the documentary that made the movie about the people who are building the Versailles house.
Oh, those people in Florida?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And Chris Hedges was one of the people they interviewed in her latest documentary, the filmmaker's documentary. Her name escapes me right now. And he basically said, this is where we're at, and it's gonna, this is sort of like we're gonna see eventually the fall of Rome in America. This is what happened. He said this is what happened in Rome, and it's true. They were making, they were at their height, building, and building was flourishing, money was rushing in, coming in, but where it was all going just wasn't the way. It wasn't working for everybody, and that's where we're at, I think, and I think we'll be talking a lot more about this with Bernie Sanders in the race because Bernie Sanders is going to make this an issue.
Yeah, and I think it's just whether you can market that to the American people and say your choice is between capitalism depriving you of your dignity or pretending as if the fact that everything looks nice, there's a nice veneer, a whitewashed sepulcher, we'd say in the Baptist church, doesn't mean that we're not heading towards a rougher place than we think we are.
Right.
But I'm gonna go ahead and head out.
All right, cool.
I've got to head. But
Perfect.
I do have one point about Howard Schultz though.
Go ahead.
That his threat to that he's only going to run if there's a centrist, if there's not a centrist Democrat nominee is so pointless, because by the time that you would know that, it would be beyond the time that he'd have to file or back out from filing to run.
Right.
And so I found that particularly disingenuous of him.
Yeah, I do think this is all bullshit. I think it's a play to get some attention. I'm sure he'll come out. Well, I mean, he did come out with a book, but I'm sure he'll come out with another book. We just lost Cameron, but yeah, that's totally right about Howard Schultz. Got another caller on the line here. 1 second. What's your name? Where are you calling from? I believe this is Rob, according to your username. What's up? You're on the line. Uh-oh. Rob, try calling in again in a second. For some reason, it's not working. Try again. I'm going to end the call. Call right back in. Let's go back to the comments here. Let's get past this. Ryan says, we got another caller. Steven or Stefan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing? What's your name? Well, I'm sure it's Steven or Stefan, but what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Actually, my name is Ronald Reagan.
There we go. I think I just gave away your real name. I'm sorry.
Dude, bro. So,
how you doing, Ronald Reagan? I mean, I've been, your screen name has been a part of my life for, geez, how long have you been IMing into the Majority Report?
I don't know. Since you were in middle school, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, you've been a part of my life. Your username has been part of my life for at least, I started working there in 2011. So, boy, geez, that's almost a decade ago. Oh, my God. But, yeah, how you doing?
Good. So, Bernie Sanders. Pretty exciting stuff, right?
Oh, what are you talking about? What's going on?
Well, I heard he's running for president. Is that true?
I didn't know that. Wow. Whoa.
What do you make of the whole Bernie Bro phenomenon? Is there any truth to the idea that Bernie supporters are meaner online, or is that totally made up? That's my question for you, and I got to jump.
Okay, cool. Thank you for calling in, Ronald Reagan, and I will answer your question. This is my view on Bernie Bros. They're more dangerous than Trump supporters. They're more violent. They're more racist. They're more sexist. They're more misogynistic. They're more Islamophobic. They're more xenophobic. They're more anti-Semitic, especially anti-Semitic. They are really the worst of the worst. I saw them marching in Charlottesville, screaming at anyone with a still with her bumper sticker that you will not replace us. They were especially on the lookout for woke white people and people of color, and they were yelling at them, "You will not replace us." And they're bad, folks. They're something to worry about. They run harassment campaigns. I don't know how long I can do this with a straight face. Bernie Bros, listen, the Bernie Bro moniker is bullshit. It has been 100%, this is 100% factual. It has been discovered via these emails that were eventually leaked that the Bernie Bro phenomena was pushed by the Clinton campaign. This is truth. And it happened in 2008 with Barack Obama supporters in the primary being called Obama boys. And the difference then was that the internet wasn't where it was. It wasn't as mature yet. There was no Twitter in 2008 in terms of the Twitter that exists now. Twitter in 2008 were people texting via their flip phone that they woke up and had an omelet for breakfast. Facebook in 2008 was what? Could you even get on Facebook if you didn't have a .edu email address in 2008? YouTube was for vloggers and Lonely Girl 19 or whatever it was, that fake vlog show that was like a fictional like cult story, which was genius at the time. I thought, at least. The world has changed and technology has changed with it. And you are giving anybody who has this technology the power to have their voice heard. And this includes some shitty people. And every candidate has shitty fans and followers. It's the truth. There's shitty Hillary supporters back in 2016. There were tons of them. There's going to be shitty Kamala supporters. There's going to be shitty Cory Booker supporters. There's going to be shitty Elizabeth Warren supporters. There's going to be shitty, I don't know, all the candidates' supporters. Bernie Sanders has shitty supporters too. There's nothing new there. The difference between a presidential campaign, though, and I'm saying this including Hillary's campaign in 2016 and then everyone running this year, is that we're not talking about, a small group of a couple hundred or a couple thousand people who get online and decide to all coordinate their harassment against someone, like we saw with like Gamergate or different like alt-right subsects. Presidential campaigns, we're literally talking about millions of supporters. And if you're going to think that, the few hundred or even the few thousand in the worst case scenario are some case indicative of the whole, we're talking millions, then that's just ridiculous. It's not the same. I saw, back in 2016, I saw people equating Bernie Bros to Gamergate. First of all, as someone who was there when Gamergate was happening and was in the thick of it all, following it, getting shit for it, you could search my name on YouTube and find basically tons of people talking all sorts of trash about me during that time period. I don't give a shit, but basically that's what happened during Gamergate, and I'm a guy, so I didn't even get like 0.1% of it. What I got was nothing compared to what people like Zoe Quinn, who the whole thing was formed around to begin with, and other women who were involved, wasn't even 0.001%. I'm being generous by saying it was 0.1%. So to even think that whatever person logging on and saying, actually, or whatever, or someone calling you a liar or whatever dumb shit people are saying online, to think those few dozen people or whatever are indicative of millions is ridiculous. And to think it's in any way comparative to these actual harassment campaigns that happened is also bullshit. The people during Gamergate who were harassed during Gamergate were literally just women who played games, or women who were developing games, or women who reviewed games. The people who are getting harassed, quote unquote, 99% of the time on Twitter are people who log on and go, fuck Bernie Sanders, I hope his old ass dies, or some shit like that. And then people log on going, wow, you're an asshole. And that to them is harassment because they see 50 people tweeting at them that you're an asshole. I mean, we got a call coming in. Am I saying that there's no Bernie Sanders assholes? Obviously, I didn't just say that. I said there's probably dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands. But that's not indicative of millions of people, and that goes for all the campaigns. You're calling on the line. Jameson, how are you doing?
Hey, what up, Bindi? How's it going?
Good. How are you? Calling me Bindi?
Yeah, that's your name now.
That takes me back. I used to be called Bindi at like day camp back in like junior high.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going by Bindi now. So I've got a question for you. Should we even like try going for Bernie this time, or should we just go to Stein 2020? I think she can do it this time.
Right.
And right. I'll just leave it there.
Right.
That's all I got.
All right, cool. I will answer that. Thanks for calling. Obviously you should vote for Jill Stein if Bernie Sanders doesn't win. It's important that, especially if you live in any of the following states, you should vote for Jill Stein. This is a safe vote, by the way, if you're voting in any of these states for Jill Stein in 2020. Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Arizona, Georgia, maybe even Texas, Iowa, New Hampshire. Yeah, those are the safe states. Vote for Jill Stein in those states if Bernie doesn't win. I'm gonna just leave it there. I'm gonna get shit for it if I do leave it there. Come on, people, come on. Jameson here knows where to go with this because I'm sure he voted the non. Listen, if you're in a safe state, vote for Jill Stein. Vote third party. Who gives a shit? If you're in New York, California, doesn't matter, man. Vote for whoever you want. It really doesn't matter. And don't listen to anyone who tells you that you're. And this is the general, obviously. If you're in for the primary, vote for Bernie Sanders. But if you're in a purple state, I'm in the camp that you should strategize and think how your vote can be most helpful. I'm not going to go out there and say a vote for whoever's a vote for Trump. I'm not going to shame you into voting for whoever. But in my view, whoever the Democratic nominee is, hopefully it's Bernie Sanders, but if it's not, and you live in a purple state, you should probably vote for the Democratic nominee. Because while, like I said, shooting for the stars is what we're doing with Bernie and his policies. They're not radical, but in this political climate, it is considered shooting for the stars. And I say that, I don't mean pie in the sky, like it's never going to happen. I mean, that's the goal. That's what we want. But if it doesn't happen, then whoever the Democratic nominee is the compromise. And I think we should beat Trump. Again, it's not the only thing we should do. But if it comes down to it, the compromise is if we could change the political climate and beat Trump, perfect. If we could only beat Trump, that's better than doing neither. That's just my opinion. Again, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at you and say, you got to vote for whoever. Let's play another clip. I think I have another clip. Do I have another clip? All right. Okay. I'm going to play the Bernie Sanders campaign ad. The shortened, social media campaign ad that he put out. I'm going to play that now. And then we'll go through some comments. If you'd like to call in, you could just... Oh, we got another caller. Let's take it. Hello. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's up? Omar.
How you doing?
Hey. So... Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sounds perfect.
Okay.
How you doing?
Yeah, I had your YouTube live.
That happens. Yeah, it's hard, and I get it. It's hard to.
Can you hear me though? Am I good?
You sound perfect. Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Minnesota.
What's up?
My question is it's not like a question, but what do you think about the field, the 2020 field? It feels very weak right now, with Kamala, I think
right.
Kamala Harris and Kristen Gillibrand, there's no substance right now. I feel like Bernie Sanders and Warren are the only two, talking about substance. At the point where in this country, the wealth is just going to the top,
right?
And there's no discussion about that at all. What do you think about that? How do you think the debates play out?
So far, it's really hard to tell. Although there is a debate really early this year, I think the first one's in June, which yeah, MSNBC. It's actually not that early if you're someone who's not been. I remember In 2012, when there was a bunch of Republican candidates going up to running for the primary to face Obama in the general, I believe the first debate was in August of 2011. So, usually the debates do start the year before. I don't think they've ever started this early in June. It's an MSNBC debate, I believe. And
I assume it's to like shorten the field because it feels like this feels like really wide. Now, like there's guys like Castro. Like I forgot he was running.
Right. Here's the interesting thing. Remember how last time around for the Republicans, they did like the loser debate in the beginning, and then the next hour was like the main event.
Yeah.
MSNBC apparently is promoting this as a 2-night event, which means they're going to split these debates up into 2 nights, which means there's going to be certain candidates who are on the stage with each other who are going to end up being on the stage with people for the next debate for the first time. It's like some sort of pro wrestling gauntlet or something, It's
like for me, it's just like I've been following this slowly. I haven't been keeping up like very tight, but it just feels like no one's talking about issues at all. Like the Bernie like campaign ad, like that was so refreshing. Like he just hit every point: Medicare for all, free college, like the climate change. Like it was just back to back. But like when I watch like Cory Booker or Kristen Gillibrand, it's just like, oh, like this is how I grew up, or like at this time. Like I'm talking about at this time right now, like. It's so important that we place the stick in the stick in the ground just because like the momentum is just shifting. Like Amazon, they're growing at a like high speed right now.
Right.
And like, yeah.
Like it's funny because a lot of the like we were talking about earlier with the previous caller, a lot of anti-Bernie sentiment on Twitter in certain bubbles, and one of their usual attacks on him is that his supporters are all just part of a cult of personality. They just like Bernie because this old guy is some sort of super charismatic superstar to young people, which is a joke because if anything, if anyone's supporters care all about the policy and not the person, it's the Bernie Sanders supporters. It's clear as day. And that's why Bernie running is so important. I do think, let me pull up a list of people who are running. We got Andrew Yang, who's literally just a wild card. He's a guy, to be fair, he's a guy running on universal basic income. This guy I like the guy. He's a nobody, but if he gets on a stage and throws some of this stuff out there, then that's great. We have like a friend of Oprah, Marianne Williamson or something running.
Those first, I don't even know who that is.
Right. We have Elizabeth Warren, who again I like. I like Elizabeth Warren. I like
her too.
I probably like her a lot more in the Senate, where she's owning bankers as a part of whatever finance committees or whatever the finance and banking committee she owns them on usually. The
only thing I don't like about her is our foreign policy. That just like it irks me so much.
Right.
Like she's willing. Like I feel like she's willing to go right. Like of center, like I feel like she's willing to do that.
Well, I think people forget that she was a Republican for most of her life. Right? Yeah. Listen, I like Elizabeth Warren,
but I'll take Warren though. Like Warren, like she'll like enforce like the laws in the executive branch. But,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
I do think, and I don't think this is a bullshit issue. I am very bothered by this whole Native American thing with her. It's so stupid that the idea that that this stuff is true, like, people want to just throw this aside. Like, Republicans are being disgusting and racist about it. But the legitimate documents that have come out that show that she put down Native American or whatever, fine, she's come out and apologized for that stuff. That's fine. I get it. When you're young, you do stupid things. You could have even just made a mistake. Maybe it wasn't even from what I've read. She was told her whole life that she was, she had a lot of Native American family. That was her heritage. So I get it. I mean, I myself have been told many times that, I have Italian and Prussian and English background. My dad's side of the family is, Ashkenazi Jew, but I put down on my on my whatever, when people ask me what I am, I'm Caucasian. That's what I identify as. That's what I am. You look at me, that's what I am. Although a lot of people think I'm Spanish or Middle Eastern, but
that thing, it's like, it feels like the email thing in like 16. Like, it's not like exactly that, but like it just feels like it just hits a bit. Like anyone like just like tuning in will be like, oh, that's kind of like creepy. Like, why would she do that? Like, it's kind of messed up. Why would she do that? But it's not like, I don't know. It's just one of those things that's just gonna linger on if she's like the nominee.
Right. And the thing, listen, like what I was getting to before when I was saying that, it's fine that stuff happened in her past, whatever. She apologized, that's cool. But the DNA test, I don't want to harp on it. I've talked about it, I feel like, more than I want to. But I just can't get over it. Because not only, listen, like it was incredibly dumb. Just from a campaign strategy move. Whoever told her that, if they're still to do that, whoever's still working for her if they're still working for her campaign, they should be fired. And I'm not someone who wants to see anyone lose their job. Who isn't a...
That was like a grenade.
Yeah, like, it's so stupid. Why would you do that? Just what are you proving? And the fact that no one thought, how would Native American communities respond to this?
Yeah.
That never even crossed anyone's mind. How do you do that? Like, first of all, the whole DNA test thing really plays into a lot of, white supremacist beliefs in terms of like what do you like, especially in this day and age with the rise of these specific right wingers. Yeah. What do you think? Like, I'm like literally going. And
it just played into their playbook exactly, like just perfectly.
Like, why don't you, like, what I'm thinking, what could she have done worse? Bring in Charles Murray as an expert on this stuff? Like, what worse could she have done? But, like, I don't think they got it, which, if you want to say that's for better or worse, fine. But they did not understand what they did, and, again, they had to apologize for that. That's why I'm really, sort of, again, she's still my second pick.
Yeah, she's just, personally, I think she's not, like, a strong candidate in, like, the presidential race. Like, I feel like Donald Trump could trip her up because she's very, like, wonky. And someone like wonky, like Bernie Sanders, he's very simple and, like, precise with his words. That, like, he can, like, cut through all the, like, Trump bullshit. With, like, Warren, it feels like she might get heady and, like, it just might fall apart. Right. Especially, like, how they launched with the DNA test. It's like,
Right. It was just... Let me go back to this presidential candidate list, though.
Yeah.
Because this is fun going through this. We have Amy Klobuchar, who I do not understand who her supporters are. Listen, I'm looking at this list. I get it. I get why someone likes Kamala Harris. I get why someone would like Kirsten Gillibrand. I get why someone would like Tulsi Gabbard. I get why someone would like Julian Castro. I even get why someone would like Cory Booker, who I do not like at all. I get it, though. I get the type of person who likes those people. Who is the Amy Klobuchar? Listen,
dude,
guess,
she was our senator, bro. Like, she just dominates every re-election.
Oh, right, you're in Minnesota, right?
Yeah,
right,
I'm from Minnesota. Like,
let me tell you, this stuff that's coming out about her. You want to, if some sort of donut dem or centrist Democrat or some neoliberal wants to call me a sexist for saying this, fine. That stuff about her as a boss is horrific.
Yeah.
And you don't see that about any of these other women on this list. Kamala Harris, from what I understand, is a good boss to her staff. I don't like her policies. That's what I'll go after. I don't like her history when she was California Attorney General. That's what I'm going to go after. But I can't go after her for how she treats her staff because there's nothing bad I see there. If she's good to her staff, I love that. Good. Any boss should treat their staff like a human being, like human beings. Especially, I think, if you're working in politics, because you know just how much these staffers do. But this stuff,
like, it's kind of shit. It just shows you, like, her personal, like. Like, I saw something on Twitter where it's just like, I like a tough boss. Like, that's a good president. It's like, man. Like she threw. Did she like throw like a mug at like a staffer?
Apparently, she threw a binder at someone. I joked. I joked that she picked me up and tossed me across the room. Yeah, but it's Binder. It's Binder. But I joked that when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I remember when she picked me up and tossed me across the room. But listen, like that to me isn't even the worst of it. The worst to me, and this is disgusting to me. Like I don't. This is just worse than even the physical stuff that or the berating stuff. She apparently, if she found out a staffer was getting hired somewhere else and was about to leave her office, she would call the staffer's new employer and get them to rescind their offer.
Oh my God.
She would apparently, just out of pure pettiness, make sure her staffers couldn't get work anywhere else.
I think she has like deep like issues because like wasn't her like I think her dad was like an alcoholic or something like that.
Well, I'm not gonna. I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I think she has some deep like personal issues. Like she shouldn't be running for president. Like, honestly, she's a bad candidate on the issues, but like as a person, like she got some issues to figure out.
Honestly, I don't even care about that. All I care about is this person is just not a good person from what I understand. If Minnesota likes her as a senator, then by all means they can keep voting her in if that's who they feel like represents her. But I don't want this person to represent me. This is just bad stuff. I don't know how else you if let's move on from her though. Kamala Harris, I feel like it's too much there to get into right now. We've talked about her on this show.
She's getting hit hard right now. Like she's
the clear establishment favorite right now.
Yeah.
I'm not looking too much into those endorsements she got in California with Barbara Lee, who, listen, leftists. I know it's disappointing, but if you want to be disappointed by Barbara Lee, that's fine. But her record is still great for.
Yeah, she's still great. So I feel like it's one of those California politics stuff.
Exactly. Just look at what's going on right now. Listen, Bernie just announced today that the other senator in Vermont, the senior senator in Vermont, Patrick Leahy, just endorsed him today.
Oh wow!
This guy endorsed Hillary in 2016.
Yeah, I think Bernie's going to get more endorsement this year.
Right. So look at what's happening. Basically, Barbara Lee and who else? Dolores Huerta, she endorsed Kamala. You're going to see people who are represented by these candidates. You're going to see them come out and endorse these candidates.
It's just like that old school politics. Oh, yeah, you do this, me a favor, and I'll do this, I'll endorse you.
Right.
Like, I feel like it's like one of those things that, endorsement, it's not what it used to be anymore.
But the funny thing is, that's actually how it used to be. People are using 2016 as the baseline when everyone just automatically endorsed Hillary because there was no one else running. People really have to understand that the race in the Democratic primary, when all these endorsements first came in, wasn't Hillary versus Bernie or Hillary and Bernie and what's-his-face, Martin O'Malley. It was literally the Democratic primary in 2015, when all these endorsements first started coming in, was Hillary. That was it. It wasn't until those first debates and then those first primaries got close did Bernie Sanders all of a sudden become this national figure. And
yeah, we forget that. It's been a long time.
Right. So you're going to see this year people in whatever candidate's running, you're going to see the people in their states, whatever, the senator who represents California, senator represents Vermont, whatever, the people in those states are going to come out and endorse that person. And that's going to be what you see at least until further along in the primaries, when people start switching or people start, standing up for someone who they see is, pulling ahead in the race. That's what you're going to see. But let's quickly go through some of these other names. Gillibrand is going to get knocked out early. She does not have any constituency. I understand what she was going for. She lost it. She's not going to get the people who would go for her are going to go for Harris or Klobuchar or Booker. That's what's going to happen there. Tulsi is going to get knocked out early because, except for weirdo leftists who think that Seth Rich was murdered by the DNC and Hillary Clinton, they're going to go for Bernie unless they're one of those weirdos. and I'm saying this as someone who isn't a big fan of Tulsi, but thinks this whole bullshit about her being some sort of Russian agent is also bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's move on from her, though. John Delaney, he's the centrist. He's the most centrist, I would say, in the race. Nobody who's been running he's been running in Iowa for like a year. He's like the first guy who jumped into the race. He's a former U.S. rep. No one gives a shit about him. He's going to get knocked out early. Julian Castro is not going to do as good as I think people thought he may have done. Like you said, people forgot he even ran. There's just nothing, it's unfortunately for some people, unless you're currently in office, it's hard to run for president with any sort of, attention on you, There's a Pete Buttigieg, whatever his last name is, mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Listen, this guy's whole thing is the whole Martin O'Malley argument. I'm the young guy this time around, so that means young people are going to love me. We've seen that's not the case. Young people like policies that help them out, and the person who has those policies is Bernie Sanders. So
this guy, he has no substance at all. Like,
his whole thing,
his shtick is just like, I'm the young guy. Please, this is new ideas. But like, what are your ideas though?
Oh yeah, that was Martin O'Malley's whole thing. He thought there was a belief in 2016 that because it was just Hillary, the person who was gonna run ahead and be the next like JFK was gonna be Martin O'Malley, who was going to become like the next Democratic star because young people were going to flock to him because they saw some young, good-looking guy, and he was going to be John F. Kennedy or some shit like
Literally,
that.
like one guy showed up to one of his events.
Yeah, and he didn't make it past Iowa. It was a joke.
Man.
Yeah. I mean, whoever's calling in right now, I'll get to you in a second. I'm sorry. Call in after the call that's currently on, okay?
Yeah, we'll go through this list and I'll jump.
And then we got Cory Booker, who is probably really on one of the like down there with Amy Klobuchar. Listen, if I had this is probably my list right now: Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and then way down the line in terms of people who could actually win. I guess maybe I don't know Gillibrand, or I guess maybe if I had to Harris. But Cory Booker, absolutely not. No way. No way. This guy's going out there. His whole thing is we need to love each other and bring back, kumbaya in the country. Get the fuck out of here.
Tell that to the person working like freaking like 3 jobs. Like, oh yeah, we just got to be happy, dude. Like,
right. Also tell that to the guy with the tiki torch marching in Charlottesville, Virginia. That just hug. Hey, Richard Spencer, just hug Cory Booker, and everything's gonna be okay.
This guy is like just tone deaf, man.
Yeah,
like,
he's just
even after the Amazon deal, like his thing was just like, oh my god, we gotta bring him back. Like,
never forget this. People, I hope I'm gonna bring this up constantly. I want this to be remembered forever. Anyone who thinks any of these Democrats who are out there saying Bernie Sanders didn't support Hillary Clinton in the general election, and that he was knocking her just as close as the day of the general election against Trump. He did more events for her than anyone except her own family.
I saw that. I saw a clip from Rachel Maddow. Like,
right, he did.
Like, I didn't even remember that. That's crazy.
He did more events for her in August or September. I forget which month. He did more events for her in one of those months than she did for herself.
Man, dude.
And the idea that he didn't throw his full-hearted support behind her is a joke. I remember people knocking his endorsement speech at the DNC when he would go through the list of his policy proposals and say, "Look what we did! We did this, and this is why Hillary is the person you should vote for if you want to continue fighting for this policy." People were knocking him for that. Because they were saying, oh, look, Bernie's making it about himself. It was an endorsement campaign after he ended his race. If you know anything about politics, the whole point of that is to congratulate your supporters, make them feel good, and then explain to them that if you cared about those things that we fought for, you need to vote for this person. And in this case, that person was Hillary Clinton. He was making the case for her by saying she will get us as close to, she will expand the ACA. She will fight for, she will fight climate change. That was his point. He was saying we fight for these things, and if we want to continue that fight between Hillary and Donald Trump, we got to go with Hillary, no question about it. That was the speech, and people were just too dumb to understand that.
Like, even Hillary Clinton, like, there was, like, an interview, I think it was a couple months ago, I don't remember, but, like, Hillary Clinton, like, threw shots at him, like, he didn't help me. Like, that was, like, dude, he put his credibility on the line. Like, people still to this day are like, I don't know if I can trust, like...
Listen, I voted for her in safe New York, because I felt like it was what I had to do.
She almost lost Minnesota, dude. That's how...
I would have felt bad if I didn't vote for her, actually, now that especially being that she lost. And that's in New York. That's just how I feel. I mean, there's no reason to feel that way. My vote didn't do anything to change anything, but that's just how I feel. So, so I didn't regret voting for her in the general until she said that, and then I was sort of like, wow, like, way to just fan the flames for no reason after you don't even matter anymore. It's like,
watch Bernie get the nomination and like these people just attack him. Like, they'll just be like, oh, we're not going to endorse him. Like,
it wouldn't surprise me.
All right, man.
All right, take care. I really appreciate the call.
Like, get the next guy.
All right, take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Peace.
Kentucky Fried Comrade, you were calling in a ton, buddy. I'm sorry I couldn't get to you sooner. How you doing?
Hey, Bindi, how's it going, man?
It's going good. Thanks for being patient.
No worries. I just didn't know how your call-in system worked exactly.
Yeah, I'm just using straight up Skype. I don't have any like special system. So basically, if I take your call when you're calling, you get added to that, like the current call. And, maybe for different conversations, I would do that. But this one, I think, would get a bit confusing. Oh, we just lost him. Call back in, buddy. You were calling so much, I feel bad not taking your call. All right, let's... Hey, you're back, I think. How you doing?
Hey, sorry about that.
Don't worry about it. How you doing? What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Any big news today? I've been paying attention.
Nothing too big. I guess we might have our first Jewish president. Boring.
Whatever. I'm here to represent Pete Buttigieg 2020. Where my butt boys at? Any butt boys in the audience?
Is that a thing, or have you seen that, or is that just you?
I'm seeing it more and more. Pete Buttigieg, he's got his butt boys going out there. We're going hard. Comrade Buttigieg, look, he came out against the filibuster and for stacking the courts. So I'm buttoned up. I'm buttoned up right now.
Listen, if there was a part of me in 2016 that I felt the chafe, man. I had that chafy feeling, man. But listen, anyone who has any sort of who's going to add to the discourse in those debates, I welcome it. If he's pushing, when Michael Avenatti said he was for packing the courts when he was teasing his presidential run, I was like, fuck that guy. But hell, if he's gonna go full hearted for that, and say that's one of his major policy proposals, then get him on that debate stage. I want to hear him fight for that and force everybody else to do that. And if Bernie Sanders isn't for that, then we got to get on that and we got to criticize him for that, because he's got to be for ending the filibuster, packing the courts, and hell, I'm down for abolishing the Senate. I don't know about you.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm quickly running out of butt jokes, so I'm just going to say I agree with you completely. I'm happy to see him lead from the rear on this one. That's all I got. Have a good one, buddy.
Take care. Do you guys realize that Kentucky Fried Comrade was he must have called in 50 times while I was on that previous call, and he stuck with it just to come on the air and get those butt jokes in. Folks, that's dedication. That's what I want to see. Oh man, I didn't plug any of my plugs once, and we're an hour and a half into the live stream already. Oh wait, let's take this call. Look at me, already messing up my self-promotion skills. Enko, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm on. All right, I had to close the YouTube.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah, I'm calling from Ohio.
How you doing?
I'm good. I kind of wanted to do a quick survey of just where we stand with Bernie with regards to like the liberal media landscape. Just because I noticed something online that I found pretty interesting. Just like, of course, MSNBC doesn't take him very seriously, and like even NPR or like even Slate or Salon, but like new media like Pod Save America, like those guys have had none of them, or in the entire crooked media platform has been completely silent on Bernie Sanders today.
Oh, right. They don't. Like, they are. Listen, the crooked media guys. They're. I don't know if you're aware, but they are not. They're not. They may be on our team when it comes down to it, but they're not on our team when it comes down to it.
Right. I mean, they give lip service to Medicare for all and all the popular positions, and yet they toe such a status quo line. It's kind of. It's like disconcerting to me to think that someone could follow their content and be thinking that they're like receiving some sort of like more left-leaning like information than mainstream media, or like some alternative perspective that mainstream media isn't providing them.
Right. They are basically, to me, this is what their podcast is. It's take Chris Hayes, remove anything that shocks me about Chris Hayes, still to this day, that shocks me about Chris Hayes having a primetime show on MSNBC. Any of the things he advocates for or believes, because I think Chris Hayes is a leftist, even though, sometimes I guess he's a little bit more mainstream Democrat on his show sometimes. So take Chris Hayes, remove all that good stuff, and clone him 3 or 4 times. How many podcast guys, Pod Save America guys are there?
Yeah, there's at least 4.
Yeah.
3 original founders.
Clone them and throw them on a podcast, and that's Pod Save America. First of all, let's also get to the fact that Pod Save America doesn't make any sense. What the hell is that title? What is the play on words there? There is no phrase, God Save America. I've said this on the show before. They're confusing it with God Save the Queen, but that doesn't work.
God Bless America.
Or God Bless America. Yeah, the show should be called Pod Bless America.
Right.
There's no Pod Save America. There's no God Save America.
It's nonsensical.
Right.
Truly. And I guess that's what I find interesting is just like, as opposed to even tepidly covering Bernie Sanders and a historic day for donations and everything, they're literally just media blackout. They're not even covering it. MSNBC is covering it. Slate, Salon, other, more left-leaning but not like mainstream sources, they cover Bernie Sanders. Right. The Atlantic, what other some more, they're not, and the Atlantic's more centrist, but they're literally just not even wanting to like acknowledge his existence.
Well, let's jump on. I'm sure I could find another one of those for you. Give me a second. Let's see. I believe Share Blue is quiet on it. Not surprising.
Oh, yeah, that's not surprising. Yeah.
But did they could now. I like Media Matters a lot, and Media Matters doesn't cover. And I know they're a wing of whatever certain groups that we don't like, that left that don't But Media Matters in and of itself, I have friends that work at Media Matters, acquaintances that work at Media Matters. People who've been on this show work at Media Matters because Media Matters is like a thing all on its own. They do great work, and they stay out of the presidential primaries, and that's fine. If you're an organization that just covers the right, that's totally fine. Why would you jump in to talk about this stuff and alienate from your vision of just going after the right and putting any sort of and criticizing them? That's fine. But let me see if these guys covered Kamala Harris. Share Blue covered Kamala Harris jumping into the race.
Well, I know that the Share Blue Twitter accounts, the people that write for Share Blue, are on the Kamala Harris train.
Oh,
I
for
know
sure.
that for a fact.
Yeah, their Share
And
Blue site doesn't have very good a search, so I can't really find it. But hell, maybe they don't cover that stuff either. Fine, that's fine. But yeah, you're right. Crooked Media has been covering all the people who jump into the.
And they did like cover it briefly. Like I saw posted, they covered it briefly on their actual podcast. They addressed his announcement. But it's the fact that they're not engaging with it on social media and opening it up to exposing the fact that their audience is very negative on Bernie Sanders, and kind of opening up an opportunity for the Bernie Sanders left to engage with the Pod Save America people on some of the facts that are coming out. Just like, 4 million in 12 hours, 150,000 donors, like that's historic.
Right.
That's huge.
Right. Listen, I really do think this is what the feeling was before today. I think people thought he was going to jump into the race and get no reaction from his supporters. I think people legitimately thought, or they thought just the Bernie Bro harassment squad was going to jump in on Twitter, but the actual supporters who put out donations, clearly they can't think that 3.5 million, whatever the number is at now, I don't think I mentioned it.
It's at 4.
Yeah, I don't think I've even mentioned it yet. Bernie Sanders, within the first 3 hours of announcing he was running for president today, raised $3 million. Kamala Harris, just a few weeks ago, made the record by raising $1.5 million in 24 hours.
And that was with 38,000 supporters.
Right. Bernie's going to have a lot more supporters giving a lot smaller donations to make a number that's 3 times what Kamala Harris probably is going to end up. No, even more when you think about it, because it was 3 times that within the first 3 hours.
Right.
Wouldn't surprise me if we saw 5-6 mil by tomorrow morning.
So that's kind of like what I find interesting is at some point the people that even follow these more tepid liberal but seemingly left publications or media outlets, you're going to have to really start questioning, like, how liberal am I as a person if they're not even covering the most popular candidate that's running for the Democratic nomination?
Absolutely.
So Bernie's not just pushing the politics to the left. He's pushing the Overton window of the respective left sphere and having to really make people question their own deep-seated beliefs, I feel. Right.
No, I think that really perfectly, encapsulates it. I just kept thinking today when I heard these numbers come in that, this is without a doubt shocking people who should not be shocked by this. I'm
shocked by it, though. I'm even shocked by it because I've received enough media signaling that I thought his core support had tapered off a little bit. And this is just like reinvigorating my support for him.
Maybe I'm that far deep into it, but I am not. I love seeing it. It makes me excited to see it, like to officially see it. But it is not surprising to me. We are seeing.
Here's what I would say. I'm sorry. It confirms for me what I thought was just me being so deep in the ass of left Twitter that it couldn't possibly be real. Like, because that's what I was told. That's what these Pod Save America guys tell themselves and tell their audience all the time. Twitter is not real life. And it's like, no, dude, that's where the grassroots politics is taking place in this day and age. You're in denial if you think that Twitter is not real life at this point.
I agree, but I also I have 2 feelings about this. I do think there are people who put too much into how much Twitter reflects the larger electorate. For example, I remember in 2016 people being confused as to how Hillary was winning all the time when there was so much support on Twitter and online in general for Bernie Sanders. It's clear now that it just takes a little bit of thinking to realize, her supporters were older, less online, and the ones that were online wouldn't be in the same communities as the Bernie Sanders supporters. Thus, they weren't seeing whatever support was out there. Also possible that, and this is not also possible, this is what happened. Not to call them low information voters, but people who are just less engaged in politics were also more likely to be Hillary Clinton supporters. Not saying anything deeper there than what that is. Obviously, if you're less into politics, you're going to vote for someone who the Democratic Party is backing because you think they have your best interest. They're looking out for your best interests. So that's really what happens there. So that's my feeling about, be a little bit cautious about just saying that. There are addendums to it. But however, I do think Twitter is obviously, and other online mediums are also reflective of the real world. Everyone out there isn't a Bernie Sanders supporter because everyone you see is a Bernie Sanders supporter, but because you see so many Bernie Sanders supporters online, it means there's a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters in the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And that it's reflective of intense engagement, and that intense engagement definitely does it's not that that intensity is only found within the Twitter world. It's kind of it's reverberating out into the general sphere. People are getting their news potentially from Twitter and not from these other traditional news sources anymore.
Right. I've noticed that. Right. It's for sure happening. I remember one of my mistakes in 2016 was I was really following the primaries for both myself, and at the time, I had just left the Majority Report towards the end of 2015. I was working for Cafe, which is now Pre-Barara's media group, but at the time I was working with Blake Zeff, who was the former political editor at Salon, and a bunch of really funny people if you're on Twitter, you might know of, Boring as Heck, Rob Wisman,
Aren't some Chapo guys from Cafe.com?
Right. That's Virgil. where Virgil Texas and Felix Biederman came up with Blake. They came up with Carl Diggler. Right. I would see those guys come in on a regular basis. Yeah, it was great to see them. I miss seeing all those guys. Yeah, I got to get them on the show. But when working there, I was covering the campaigns, but I was doing videos, and you can only cover so much working at a startup doing videos. And I would just basically post shit on Twitter that I don't think many people were talking about outside of maybe Twitter at the time. And really what I should have done is I should have done something more with it. I should have created some sort of site or, I don't know, a newsletter or something so people could have taken this stuff and maybe even started my own podcast a bit earlier than I did. So people could have taken this stuff and also, put it out there in the world because, like you said, it wasn't more people are getting their news from Twitter now, but that wasn't always the case. Maybe I should do something like that this time around and make sure everyone could see what's going on Twitter so we could debunk it. Because I don't want people going on Twitter, wanting to learn about politics, not really knowing anything, and seeing, oh, is Bernie Sanders really a Russian agent? What? That's ridiculous, but if you know nothing about politics, which is fine, and you want to learn and you log into Twitter and you see someone with 50,000 followers saying this, you're going to think, wow, if someone that important that so many people listen to are saying it, then it must hold some sort of merit.
Right.
That's...
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
It's just interesting that the left conversation is not being reflected in any other mainstream or even popular news platform currently. It's just interesting to me that they're not even what is it? Jacobin would be the most I don't know. It's just it's very interesting that Slate, Salon, these other more people would consider left of mainstream hate Bernie Sanders essentially.
And I like Jacobin, but they're not even. I don't really consider them even a Slate is an opinionated site based on the current events every day, and and then you have your straight up news sites that report news, and then you have
general interest publications. That's not Jacobin.
Jacobin's sort of and again I love Jacobin, but they're sort of an essayist, like an essay website. People pitch columns and write columns based on, things that might not always be the most current thing in the news. So people aren't even getting like their news from that. Maybe they'll form an opinion based on a policy or something from that. But if go ahead. Right now, please.
Like right now, the most mainstream publication with leftist politics is Teen Vogue.
Right. I'd probably also add The Intercept.
Okay. Then maybe The Intercept is probably where that's the closest thing to like more general interest, but they are very political.
Right. Right. You meant general interest altogether, right? No. Then Teen Vogue for sure. Yes.
And that's what's just that's baffling. That should just really, that's like reflective of where we are right now. And it'll just be really interesting, I guess, to see how is the mainstream media going to deal with this if the most popular, potentially like first or second runner of this huge field of candidates too.
Right.
That's the other thing is it was easy almost to forgive them not giving Bernie any fair shake when Hillary was the anointed one. But when there's a field of 20 and Bernie is far above the other 18, it just looks like they're very biased.
Right. As someone mentioned in the chat, Grim in the chat mentions Democracy Now! And the Real News Network. But I think people don't realize, and it sucks to say this as someone who does a podcast and a YouTube live stream, the people who take the time to listen to an hour and a half, 2 hour long YouTube live stream or podcast are not the people that I'm talking about that we need to reach. People who are looking to learn stuff and want to, the majority of people who are going to end up voting for Bernie Sanders are going to get their primary information from, written articles and posts, on blogs or whatever that take them maybe 2 to 5 minutes max to read, maybe there needs to be an outlet that does that. I don't know. I wish I had an answer to that. I wish I had the money and the financial resources to do it myself in terms of hiring people and doing that.
Well, what the left has going for it is your podcast and the podcast sphere, sort of like the talk radio of the left. There's a lot of leftist podcasts.
No, right? They're really again. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's great, but to the detriment of that medium, though. The people who are people like right now, the people watching on YouTube Live and who are going to listen to this podcast, altogether, when most people listen to this show via podcast, altogether, a couple thousand people are going to listen to this episode from the stats that I see. And, those people are people who are already going to be paying lots of attention to the primaries and who, this stuff, I might be telling them news every now and then, or I might be giving them some sort of new information. Obviously, there's a reason they're listening. Maybe it's whether it's to confirm their own beliefs or they are learning something. But to even listen to the show, you have some sort of you're ahead of the game already. You're already knowledgeable enough in the political sphere to know the show exists. To know I'm a nobody. In the big picture. You maybe follow me on Twitter, wherever, from me from Majority Report, from, when I would do that Tumblr blog that was viral when I ran it, however people know me, you're already in a very small group of people who are, extremely knowledgeable about what's going to be going on during the primary. And I hope I can continue to, help in some capacity to even inform you guys about things, because there's so much going on nowadays that even I don't catch it all. But to reach those people you and I were just talking about, the people who are going to be fooled or misinformed by idiots on Twitter with hundreds of thousands of followers, but no idea what they're talking about. We on the left have to figure out a way to do that, because these podcasts aren't going to reach those people, or are going to reach very few of those people.
Right, and I just feel like there's going to be this phenomenon of like a second awakening, because Bernie's candidacy was like the awakening for a lot of people that have joined the left since 2016, because they realized like, holy shit, like maybe there was a candidate that was a lot better than Hillary. Maybe Bernie would have won. Like even people that came late to that realization, then even supporting him during the primary. There's a lot of people like that, and I think there's going to be a lot of people this time around who kind of are like, wait, why is Bernie not being taken as seriously as he kind of seems among the popular left and that the rising left? Like, it would just be really interesting because, like, I don't know if AOC is going to even throw her weight around, like, and endorse anyone whatsoever. That's possible, but if she doesn't endorse someone, and I want her to endorse Bernie, obviously, but I will find it very disappointing if she chooses to be one of those people who just sits out of this, because it's, I didn't go after Warren. I thought it was stupid to go after her then when she decided to sit out, the primary. I think it's fine to do so, but in AOC's case, she's someone who we are viewing as someone who's not afraid to come out and say the things that need to be said. And for her, of all people, if she doesn't come out and endorse, I'm going to find that very disappointing. Because there's a lot of people who love. Yeah.
Because if she doesn't endorse, to me, it's telling me that she wants to endorse Bernie, but is afraid to alienate people who won't like her for that reason. And that's disappointing to me. With all due respect, the left needs to stop being, at least the left who is in office, needs to stop being scared of things once they get into office. Like, very disappointed to see her sort of silent on Venezuela and sort of not stand up for Ilhan Omar.
Ilhan Omar, yeah.
Right. During the whole thing where she was, I know she came out and said what she said to defend her, but she at the same time, said she said the wrong thing, and it's just untrue. Ilhan Omar said nothing wrong. That is what AIPAC is. They are a lobbyist group that backs candidates based on their support of Israel. So if you want to be, receive support from AIPAC, you need to be supportive of Israel. And AIPAC is a powerful group.
And her tweet and like her tepid support of Ilhan Omar came after she threw Jeremy Corbyn under the bus for his accusations of anti-Semitism, as if she wasn't prepared for that.
Right. This country is gonna get. This is what I think is also going to be happening in this primary season. We're going to see the whole progressive accept on Palestine thing dead this in the next year. The whole idea that progressives could be that pro-Israel and just consistently throw the Palestinian people under the bus is going to end, in my view, at the very least, for anyone who considers themselves a progressive. I'm not saying the Democratic Party, that's going to maybe asking too much, but for anyone who considers themselves progressive, there's no longer going to be that opportunity.
Especially if a Jewish leader like Bernie Sanders leading that.
Right. He just announced today, the news was dropped by the Daily Beast, that Bernie Sanders' campaign manager for this presidential run is the former, one of the original co-founders of Think Progress. He was with the ACLU. He just resigned from the ACLU today. And he's going to become the first ever Muslim campaign manager in presidential campaign history in the U.S.
Yeah.
You have a Jewish man who picked this guy. This is historic for many reasons, and it's to me as open as can be as to who Bernie Sanders is and how he's going to run. It was always shocking to me during the primary in 2015, 2016 when people attacked Bernie for his weakness with people of color. And that's just not true. Many, I criticized him. I criticized him too for some of his ignorance on certain issues that affected people of color early on. He got with it pretty quick. He still says things that aren't perfect, but it's more in the actual vocabulary used than actually what he's proposing. But if you look at it, he won with millennials of all races. He won millennials of color in 2016. And on top of that, the Muslim community supported him. He did very well with Latinos. He did do sort of weak with, not sort of, I don't want to mince words here. He was weak with African American community. Black Americans did not embrace Bernie Sanders in his presidential run as well as anyone would have liked who supported Bernie in 2016. But really the reason was that, and to Hillary's credit, her, along with her husband Bill, had a repertoire with the African American community in the U.S., across the nation, from years of being who they were, the Clintons. I will not take that away from them. It clearly meant a lot to Black Americans that Hillary and Bill put in the work throughout those years. And that's why they supported Hillary. They trusted her. That's, I'm not gonna, that's just the reality of it. But it doesn't mean they hated Bernie. It was just like, we're not that familiar with Bernie. He wasn't a national figure yet. On top of that, we really like Hillary because we know her really well. And that's how we're going to vote. But if you look at poll after poll, they like Bernie in terms of favorability. They like his policies. And, this time around, I do think a lot more of them, a lot more of people of color, of, Black Americans, Latinos, Latinas, Asian Americans, whatever. They're all going to really spread their vote all over the place because you have so many people voting this time, which means they're going to even come to Bernie too.
Yeah, I actually just saw someone post a YouGov poll from February 10 to 12 this year that Bernie Sanders' net favorability amongst black voters is 31%. And that's higher than Kamala Harris.
Right. To be fair, Kamala Harris isn't a national figure yet, but I don't know how much that's going to change.
That's true.
I think people don't understand that, the generation change over 4 years is a lot. Older people have died. Younger people have moved into the next category when they break out the age ranges of votes. I'm pretty close to being in that next category as someone who's 32 years old. I'm still a millennial. I'm in one of the youngest cohorts, but I'm towards the older end of that spectrum.
Well, dude, that's such a good point though, because I was just seeing this that for every person that dies, there's 7,000 people that die every day in America. 11,000 people are turning 18.
Right. On top of that, you're gonna have. Listen, when we were talking young people last time, it was just millennials. When we talk young people this time, it's gonna be millennials and Generation Z.
Yeah.
They're voting.
Fucking huge.
And we've seen as it continues to go on, Gen X was more active in politics than boomers in terms of when they were that age, when they were the youngest cohort, the youngest voting base. Millennials more than Gen X, and we're going to see the same this time around. Gen Z is going to be voting more than millennials voted when they were in that age range. It's going to switch things up, and everything I've seen, Bernie Sanders is going to once again be the most popular young person candidate. I have no doubt in my mind. I would put money on it. Young people like Bernie. The question's going to come down to this. Are enough older generations going to jump on the Bernie train? And are young people going to vote in the numbers necessary to help Bernie win? Also, another dynamic to look at. Last time, you had a choice, Bernie or Hillary. This time, whoever has the strongest base of supporters, the people who are going to stick by that person through thick and thin, is going to keep those numbers, and all they have to do is try to expand that. The other groups, the other candidates are going to not only have to worry about winning people over, they're going to have to worry about losing people to other candidates. And that's going to be something that Bernie's not going to have to worry about. And the other candidates are going to have to worry about. I don't know how much support Bernie has lost. I'm going to guess it's not very much. And I'm also going to say it's probably offset more than enough by people who are now with Bernie. Whether that be people who are now old enough to vote, or whether that's simply people who, and I do think this number is pretty big, people who did not think Bernie was the guy in 2016 and then saw what happened over the course of the past 2 years and thought, damn, those policies are what we need, or even just B, damn, those policies are what is the anti-thesis of Trump, and that's what we need, regardless of why, so those people are now jumping aboard, the Bernie train. It's all speculation, obviously, until those first primaries. But there's a number of new factors. Also something to factor in. Certain states are going earlier than last time around. California is voting early. I do think that's a problem. Because I do think Kamala Harris is going to be obviously popular in California. The question will be, though, if Bernie Sanders supporters can stick with Bernie, Kamala Harris will have strong support, but she will also lose people to the other candidates, having California that early. Because those Bernie supporters aren't going to any other candidates. They're going to find, those policies anywhere else. So the question will be, can Kamala, rally the troops in California to win California? But even with that, another addendum, and I feel like I'm going on maybe too much here, but another addendum to that is the delegates are handed out proportionally in the Democratic primaries. It's not winner takes all. So basically, if Kamala wins the Democratic primary in California, but Bernie and other candidates eat into her percentage, then she's not walking away with that many more delegates as the other candidates, which means everyone or whoever's closest to her in votes is still well within the race.
That's really interesting because, it might carry the headline that they won the state, but that doesn't matter in this fragmented primary in the same way.
Right. It's going to, listen, like, people are thinking how it was in 2016 when, Bernie was getting maybe 40% somewhere or 45%, and Hillary was getting 60% or 55%. And when you win that much of the primary, 60% or 55, whatever, you take a larger portion of delegates than the other person. But if you're winning because you got 36% and the other candidates are getting, 20-something percent and then 10% and then whatever, 15%, 16%, 18%, then you ain't taking that large of a haul comparatively to Hillary did in 2016.
And not to mention the elimination of super delegates voting in the first round.
Right. Super delegates to me was always a mind fuck for people. They never really did matter in terms of actually, like, their vote cast at that point. Like, it was just who they pledged to vote. Their vote wasn't cast at that point. And also, it really didn't matter. If more people voted for Bernie, Bernie would have won. It's that simple. People say, say the whole rigged election, the DNC rigged it against Bernie. Listen, there were things done to make it harder for Bernie, but in the end, there was no, shenanigans with the vote totals or voting or anything. Bernie Sanders lost to Hillary based on votes. Is it fair how hard they made it for Bernie in terms of, debate scheduling, the superdelegates, the sort of undercover insider information being passed between the DNC to the Hillary campaign and other groups or whatever? Obviously not. But, it wasn't quite the same, as a rigged election. People like to pretend Bernie's called it rigged. Bernie never called the election rigged. People like to pretend he was out there like Trump saying, because Trump was saying when he would lose, he would say it was rigged against him. Bernie never said that. He said the political system as a whole was rigged against everybody, against the people. And people automatically heard that and said, oh, he's saying what Trump is saying. Bernie never called the election, the primary election, which he took part in, rigged. But what I was saying before was, the superdelegates was just a mindfuck for people. Because if you were someone who was just jumping in to find out, who's winning so far, adding those superdelegates in so early before they actually officially casted their vote made it look like Hillary was well ahead of Bernie before she was actually ahead of Bernie. And people may have looked at that and said, oh, well, Bernie's got no chance, so maybe I'm not going to vote. Or, oh, Bernie's got no chance, but I don't dislike Hillary, so I'll just vote for Hillary because I want to, people like to be on the winning team. People don't like losing. Obviously, it's not everybody, but people like to bet on the winner. And that's, I'm sure, what a lot of people did without realizing that those superdelegates weren't set in stone. I don't know how many. I don't know if it would have mattered. Probably not, in my personal opinion. But clearly, it did matter somewhat.
Yeah, especially with regards to just people's engagement with the primary. I think this time around as well, people will see the primary as such a more important thing to get involved with.
Right.
And also, and being registered in advance of some of these crazy deadlines to be registered to vote in a primary. Like in New York, I knew that was a problem.
Right. There should be. I don't know who. Maybe I'll go ahead with it. You know, I am thinking actually after mentioning it earlier. I'm thinking about putting together like some sort of newsletter, or like an email newsletter, or a site of some sort, just that aggregates daily the shit going on out there and debunks it. Because I think that I'll never forget during the Nevada primaries in 2016 when the lie came out that Bernie Sanders ran on stage screaming English only to a crowd that included many Hispanic voters. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. What it ended up being, once it worked its way through the grapevine, was that Bernie Sanders himself jumped on stage and yelled English only at one of the caucus events. What it ended up being, in actuality, once the videos came out and people who were there found out about it, came out, there was a single Nevada caucus location where a Bernie Sanders delegate went on stage to to translate something in Spanish for the Spanish speakers there, and there was some sort of problem between both sides who were there with a delegate for one of the official parties going on stage and doing something that needed to be done by a neutral party. And so people were screaming out like, no, only the English only person is a neutral party. We need to get someone who is a neutral party to the Spanish only version too. It was something of that vein. I don't remember it exactly, but that's what it was. And the thing that came out on Twitter, once it worked its way through the grapevine, and America Ferrara ended up tweeting out, that's right, we had celebrities tweeting this out, was that Bernie Sanders himself jumped on stage and started wagging his finger around, going, English only, English only. It was, it was a joke, So, I'll probably do something like that. I'll figure it out. I'll let all you guys know so you guys could sign up and get the newsletter or whatever. But also what needs to be done is there needs to be a campaign. I don't know if the Bernie Sanders campaign is currently, putting something together or not, but there needs to be an organized campaign in any state where you have to be registered to a party to take part in their primary, to make sure non-democratic voters, non-democratic registered voters switch their registration to Democrat if they want to vote for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. It needs to be done immediately. There should be no waiting around. I believe New York forces people under prior laws. I don't know if that changed ever since Andrew Cuomo had the great progressive awakening once he got scared into being an actual, pretending at least, with more than just words, to being an actual progressive by Cynthia Nixon. I don't know if those laws will be changed for the next, for 2020, but the prior campaign, if you wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders in 2016, in the April primary election, that's when New York's primary was, April 2016. If you were an independent or Green Party or whatever registered voter and wanted to vote in that primary, you needed to have changed your voter registration in October of 2015. That means that, how many months is that? Like 6-7 months before the primary. That means that Bernie Sanders, that debate where Bernie Sanders said the whole forget about your damn emails thing that sort of started to launch him into the mainstream, that wasn't until October as well. And that first primary wasn't until February 2016. So if you were someone who was an independent or a Green Party member or whatever, and suddenly, in November, December, January, February, March, was like, holy shit, Bernie Sanders might be able to do it. I want to vote for him. Tough luck. You couldn't vote for Bernie Sanders. because you weren't
Yeah, I
registered
think
as
a
a
lot
Democrat.
of people were caught off guard by that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Grim in the chat says they're called closed primaries, Matt. Right, listen, I don't have a problem with closed primaries, but people should be allowed to change their registration up to the second they go up to that voting booth and say, I want to vote. There should be no reason to turn someone away from voting in a primary. If you're worried that, people are just going to switch just to fuck with the election or whatever, how many people are actually doing that? I'm going to assume not very many, if at all. It sounds like something to me that's just as bullshit of a stat as the Republicans out there saying there are millions of illegals, they say, undocumented immigrants voting, which is obviously also bullshit. If you want closed primaries so someone has to join the party to vote in the primary, I could get that. It helps build up the party voter rolls. They could reach out to you and get you to vote in other elections. Fine, I understand the reasoning behind that. But you should allow them to become a Democrat up to the moment, and any time up to the moment they walk up and say, hey, I want to vote in this primary. You should look them up. They should look them up, say, oh, you're independent or a Green Party or whatever. If you'd like to vote, you have to become a Democrat. And they can say, yes, okay, sounds good to me. Fill out a form or whatever, or check a box right then and there, and boom, they could vote. If that's what you want to do, fine. I'm fine with that. But but that's got to be it. You can't turn people away.
And on the subject of the New York primary, that's when AOC has joked that's the time when she will endorse someone. And don't ask her until then.
She can't wait that long. I'm sorry.
That's what I'm saying. She's joking about it. I don't know how serious she is, but right. Her taking a sideline stance on this, I feel like is almost disqualifying for her to be considered on the left, period.
I'm not going to go that far because, again, I didn't want to do that with Warren. But I will say it will be disappointing. It'll make me, it'll be something that I expected better of. But oh well, I would still support her probably just as much because to me that's not something that loses my support. For me, it's 99.9% policy oriented, so I'm not going to turn on her for that. But it will be disappointing, and it would also be telling on, will she stand up for other things publicly, even if she does believe in them. But I think, we'll see. I don't want to speculate on this beforehand.
Here's what I'd say is that there are just certain red lines of maintaining crossover appeal. And if you don't, stand for Bernie in the primary, you're essentially choosing the right side of that line, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
She's choosing to be more mainstream.
Yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying, and I agree with it to an extent. I think it's stupid to ask her now. I think she would obviously. No one's expecting her to endorse now. I don't think anyone should really be endorsing now. It's kind of shocking that even Bernie got endorsements and Kamala got endorsements. I think everyone should just sit back and give it a. I know everyone's jumping in early, fine, but I think everyone needs to just let the candidates do what they're doing now. And let's just wait till at least I don't know, September, October before we start getting into that. That step in the primary race. But that's just my opinion. Yeah,
I guess you're right. I mean, if I rethink it, it's just she probably won't endorse Kamala Harris or someone. She won't endorse until it's a little too late.
It's also possible that AOC just thought that she would wait and see what the reaction was to Bernie jumping in. I'm telling you, unless you're someone who's deep into this, I know AOC is obviously deep into it, she's a congresswoman, but she's in a different bubble. She might have people around her who said, I don't know, I'm seeing this stuff online about Bernie, or I'm not sure where his support's at. I'm telling you, there is definitely not a non-significant group of people whose minds have been blown today by how much Bernie Sanders has raised and by how many people, I'm not going to be surprised at all to find out that people who were counting Bernie out are suddenly going to either try to ignore him to continue pretending they could count Bernie out, or are going to start looking at him with much more, a much more serious outlook.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm really surprised that we're almost at day one and it's that time has passed of them kind of overlooking him, because they have so largely overlooked him. So much of the time when they were like the past few months, especially like MSNBC, CNN, they talked more about Beto O'Rourke and his potential candidacy than Bernie's. And it's just like, I don't even know if Beto's going to, come out and campaign. So
right. Well, this is what I think. Like, I think Bernie waited until everyone he saw as a serious contender to jump in. And then he was like, well, I could jump in now or wait for Biden. And I think the worry is if there's someone who can make Bernie's announcement look less, perhaps it's Biden. That's probably where they were coming from it. So let's get out there before Biden decides, because our announcement will be a big deal, even bigger of a deal. I guess if Biden decides yes, and then Bernie came out after, I could see that sort of hurting Bernie in terms of the mainstream's coverage of it, because it's been progressively, we've been seeing progressively more popular candidates jump in. Elizabeth Warren was first. I'll be honest, I'm shocked to see some of these campaigns fizzle out so soon. I think Warren and Gillibrand's campaigns are already on a downward spiral.
And probably Booker.
I can't even believe Booker. I forget that Booker even officially jumped in.
He didn't really make a big splash at all.
Right.
Did he get his official CNN town hall? Because it seems like they were handing them out to everyone, and I don't know if he got one.
No, they only handed them out to people who they deemed as serious CNN guys, and then and then Bernie now, because there's no denying Bernie's the front runner now. You can't.
And they want ratings, of course.
I do wonder what happens when Biden jumps in, if he jumps in. It will be an interesting dynamic. I think the jury is out on whether he hurts Bernie or the other candidates more. And truthfully, I can see it going either way. He may be more policy-wise, he may be more in line with those other candidates. But from the polling I'm seeing, for some reason, the average Democratic voter seems to like Bernie and Biden about the same level. And it seems like when asked who their second choice would be, Bernie supporters for some reason say Biden, and Biden supporters for some reason say Bernie. So
wow,
that to me,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that to me is a real worry. I don't know if it's a dynamic of them being just like nice sounding old white men. Maybe that's part of it. I'm sure it is somewhat part of it. I'm not saying it's not nothing. But I don't know. It could also just be the fact that they're the only two nationally known figures. I'm sure that plays a huge part in it. Everyone else is pretty much unknown to someone who just, casually pays attention to politics. Who do they know? Bernie, Biden, Obama, Hillary, Michelle Obama,
No, it's misogyny.
I mean, listen, without a doubt, I'm sure it's part of it. It's not, I don't want to toss that out completely. I know, we can joke and pretend that it's all, or we can pretend that it's none and be silly about it. But to be serious for a moment on this show, it certainly is a part of it. But to say that that's the reason for the support is clearly bullshit.
Yeah, I was joking.
Yeah. No, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to confuse anyone because we were having a pretty serious conversation up to that point. Yeah. So, listen, this was a great call. Definitely call again. I should do more of these just shows without a guest where we just get callers to call in. This was fun.
All right. See you.
All right. Take care. Thanks a lot. All right, folks. Over 2 hours now. I think I'm going to wrap this up in a second. I want to first tell everyone how to support the show. Can't believe I'm saying this into the second hour. Should have said it up top. I'm an idiot. I'm a buffoon. I'm a maroon. I'm a dunce. I'm a moron. I'm an idiot. But you can support this show by going to patreon.com/MattBinder. If you can afford to do so, your $5 a month or more or less greatly helps keep the show growing and going. I couldn't do it without you, and honestly, it would be very disappointing if the show didn't grow, and then because it would mean it's not growing, and it would mean it would fizzle out, which that's not happening. We have more patrons than ever. We have the YouTube subscribers are growing. The YouTube live stream watchers are growing. The podcast numbers are growing. Still able to land good guests. And increasingly getting better guests even. This was the last minute. I wasn't even planning on doing a show today. But I was like, Bernie ran. Fuck it. I got to get on this. I got to jump on and talk. Couldn't keep this all inside. So support the show if you can. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Let me thank the patrons right now. This whole show is going to be a freebie. And it would not be a freebie if it wasn't for these Patreon subscribers. So they're missing out on the members half of the show today because they, which they pay for, which they effectively pay for the entire show. Honestly, there would be no free show if it wasn't for these guys and gals. So if you can afford to become a patron, please do so. And those very special patrons are Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew H, Benji A, Bobby M, Brett R, Brian James D, Brooke H, Champagne, your name got cut off, Champagne Communist, good name, Christine H, Clement Cole, oh, I read your full name, I'm sorry, I try not to do that, but I'm sure you don't mind, Clement C, Colin R, Cecily C, Dank Uger, Dave K, Dragon Slayer 19, Emily M, excuse me, sorry Emily M, Fraz K, Francis Z, Ian Curtis J, Jameson Test, Janelle A, JR, Jasmine H, Jeff K, Josh C, Julie, Katie S, Courtney, Marcos R, Max W, User Me, Michael J, Michael M, Misfit Demit, Mr. D, Mugrim, oh, Mr. Danks, I could say, Mugrim, Nicole A, Namdenet, Omid M, Romina O, Cena, the good folks over at Struggle Session. I gotta get them on the show. I gotta reach out to them. TM, Tamni G, Thaddeus A, Tina M, Tom G, Tom M, another Tom M, Trinae E, Will P, and Zarin. Folks, thank you so much for your support. I really can't do this show without you. If you cannot afford to financially support this show, that's fine. If you can afford to do so and you're not, that's not fine. But if you can't afford to do so, totally cool. Don't feel guilty. But this is how you can help. Follow me on Twitter at MattBinder. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Go to doomed.tv. It'll take you right to the YouTube channel. No need to remember any youtube.com/usernames, whatever. You can also support this show by subscribing on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Listen, if you listen to the show on the live stream, still, if you can, if it doesn't mess with your podcast system or bother you on the phone, also subscribe so I have a more accurate total of, exactly who is listening to the show. Leave a review, written or star review. It helps a lot, really. Also, if you subscribe, it helps. If you subscribe and leave a review, it helps bump the show up the iTunes rankings. Super important if I want people to find out about the show. We receive big bumps, actually. I've noticed it. I look at the stats. When the show hits even the bottom of iTunes rankings for politics, low 100s, it helps. I see it. people discover the show by just searching on, the top iTunes rankings. And, makes me feel good to see you guys say nice things about me. All right, guys. A lot of comments. Usually I read them, but I'm going to, way too many. I'll read these last 3, 4, 5, 6. No, just a few more. Thank you, Matt, says Mist. Thank you. Really great Doom today, says Brian. Thank you. I appreciate that. Love hanging out with y'all. Left is best, says Misha. Thank you, Misha. Left is best, says Kennedy. Right. Good times. Left is best. And yes, guys, I was joking in the chat when I said to block anyone who says nice things about TMBS. Because I saw you guys saying nice things about TMBS. And I got to keep up the gimmick. Surprisingly good for a call-in show on breaking news, says Placeholder. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or as a dig. I guess I'll have to show you that my call-in shows are just as strong. I think I did have one weak call-in show, because I don't know. I wasn't on my A game whatever day that was, but yeah. I didn't even think I was on my A game today. I thought maybe like a B+ game today. But thank you for everyone for calling in. We'll certainly do this more often. Let's get some more Patreons, and then I could bump this up to the normal guest show and a call-in show. We could do both. We don't got to do either or, See you all next time on Doomed. Jeez, this was a 2.5 hour long show almost. Well, see you all next time on Doomed.